Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinata, Radha Gopinata Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parageshwara Stotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Thai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter number 5, titled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. Text number 41. Margantiyate Mukhapadmani Des. Margantiyate Mukhapadmani Des. Chanda Suparne Risayo Vivikte. Chanda Suparne Risayo Vivikte. Yasya Gamarso Dasaridvarayaha. Yasya Gamarso Dasaridvarayaha. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapannaha. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapannaha. Margantiyate Mukhapadmani Des. Chanda Suparne Risayo Vivikte. Yasya Gamarso Dasaridvarayaha. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapana. Margantiyate Mukhapadmani Des. Chanda Suparne Risayo Vibhikte Yasyagamarso Dasaridvarayaha Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapanna Margantiyatte Mukapadmanides Chanda Suparne Risayo Vibhikte Yasya Damaso Dasaridvaraya Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapanna. Word for word translation: Marganti, searching after; Yat, as; Te, your; Mukha Padma, lotus-like face; Nide, by those who have taken shelter of such a lotus flower; Chanda, Vedic hymns; Suparne, by the wings; Risaya, the sages; Vivikte, in clear mind; Yasya, whose; Agamarsa Uda, that which offers freedom from all reactions to sin; Sarit, rivers; Varayaha, in the best; Padam Padam, in every step; Tirthapada, one whose lotus feet are as good as a place of pilgrimage; Prapannaha, taking shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search after the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of rivers, the Ganges, which can deliver one from all sinful reactions. Purport: the Paramahamsas are compared to royal swans who make their nests on the petals of the lotus flower. The Lord's transcendental bodily parts are always compared to the lotus flower because in the material world, the lotus flower is the last word in beauty. The most beautiful thing in the world is the Vedas or Bhagavad Gita because therein knowledge is imparted by the personality of Godhead Himself. The Paramahamsa makes his nest in the lotus-like face of the Lord and always seeks shelter at His lotus feet, which are reached by the wings of Vedic wisdom. Since the Lord is the original source of all emanations, intelligent persons, enlightened by Vedic knowledge, seek the shelter of the Lord, just as birds who leave the nest again search out the nest to take complete rest. All Vedic knowledge is meant for understanding the Supreme Lord, as stated by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita. Vedescha sarver aham eva vedya. Intelligent persons who are like swans take shelter of the Lord by all means and do not hover on the mental plane by fruitlessly speculating on different philosophies. The Lord is so kind that He has spread the river Ganges throughout the universe so that by taking bath in that holy river, everyone can get release from the reactions of sins which occur at every step. There are many rivers in the world which are able to evoke one's sense of God consciousness simply by one's bathing in them, and the river Ganges is chief amongst them. In India there are 5 sacred rivers, but the Ganges is the most sacred. The river Ganges and Bhagavad Gita are chief sources of transcendental happiness for mankind, and intelligent persons can take shelter of them to go back home, back to Godhead. Even Sripad Sankaracharya recommends that a little knowledge in Bhagavad Gita and the drinking of a little quantity of Ganges water can save one from the punishment of Yamaraj. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-salakaya Chakshul-militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing our discussion from the third canto of Bhagavatam, chapter 5, titled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. So at the moment, currently, we're reading the prayers that different demigods are offering towards Vishnu for empowerment to do their particular services. And we're hearing in recent classes about the importance of prayers, and I was thinking about this point of why is it that prayers are important? What does it do for us? How does it help us in our spiritual lives? And a few things came to mind. One is, like we see throughout the whole Bhagavatam, like Mandragosh Prabhu was explaining on Sunday, how the whole Bhagavatam pretty much, like at least half of Bhagavatam is just full of prayers. There will be different stories about different devotees and different avatars of the Lord, and there will always be some section in every canto which is just dedicated to different prayers devotees are offering to the Lord. And Mandragosh Prabhu was also mentioning that even if we look at our own morning program, Prabhupada has designed our morning program in such a way that right from the start of the morning program till the end, we're just reciting different prayers to different personalities. First thing in Mangalati, we offer prayers to our spiritual master, and then we sing and dance in front of Radha Gopinath. Then we're offering prayers to Tulsi Marani, and then we chant our japa, and then again we're offering Lord Brahma's prayers to Radha Gopinath, and then we're offering prayers to Srila Prabhupada again, and then again before starting Bhagavatam, again we're offering prayers. So Prabhu was mentioning this nice point that even our whole morning program, Prabhupada has designed a morning program in such a way that right from the start to the end, we're just reciting prayers. So it must mean that prayers is something very special, very important in spiritual life. Otherwise, why would Prabhupada design the morning program in such a way that we're just offering prayers to different personalities? And if nearly half of Bhagavatam is just composed of prayers, then again, that tells us something that, okay, being in a prayerful mood, offering prayers is something very important for spiritual life. So what does it actually do? When someone is offering prayers to someone else, they're putting themselves in a very humble position. They're taking the lower position because you only offer prayers to someone who's superior to you. So naturally, just by taking that first step of just offering any prayer to the Lord or to any devotee or any personality, we're naturally putting ourselves into a very meek and humble position. And this helps us understand actually we're very insignificant and that we're actually very dependent on the mercy of Krishna and the mercy of Krishna's devotees. And this attracts blessings, this attracts the mercy of the Lord and the mercy of the devotees of the Lord to whom we're offering prayers to. One time, one person, he came up to Prabhupada and he asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, is there any secret formula by which we can attain Krishna Prema? Krishna Prema is the goal of life. Is there any secret formula you can tell me by which I can quickly attain love of God, the ultimate goal of life? And what was Prabhupada's response? Prabhupada said, yes, there is a secret formula by which you can quickly attain love of God. And Prabhupada said the secret formula is Trinadapi Sunichena Taro Rivasa Sishuna Amanina Manidena Kirtaniya Sadahri. So this is the secret formula to quickly advance in spiritual life and to quickly attain Krishna Prema, love of Godhead. So what is this verse saying? This verse is again highlighting the point of humility. So when we're offering prayers, we're naturally putting ourselves into that humble position. And all these prayers, they're offered in that same mood, that actually Krishna or Vishnu, that I'm very small and weak, I don't have any good qualities. I need your blessings, I need your help to overcome this situation, I need your blessings or your help to do this service properly for you. So in this way, the devotee puts himself in a very humble mood, and this attracts Krishna's blessings, Krishna's mercy, or this attracts the devotee's blessings to whichever devotee we're offering the prayers to. And we'll see prayers, they're offered when either someone's in trouble. For example, Gajendra, in 8th canto, I was reading recently of Gajendra's prayers. And that's one example of someone offering prayers when they're hit with some difficulty in life. So that's one instance where someone offers prayers. Some difficulty comes, some problem comes, some obstacle comes in the life, and then they come in front of Krishna and they offer prayers. I'm going through this difficulty, I need your protection, please help me. And these certain prayers which we're reading now, this is another type of prayer, so another mood in which prayers are offered. So another instance where prayers are offered is when you're given some service to do, and before you start that service, you understand that actually I'm very tiny and insignificant. I need Krishna's empowerment to do this service properly for him. And that's what the demigods are doing. They're understanding that they can't do this service which has been appointed to them properly, and they need Krishna's blessings. They need intelligence coming from Krishna to understand how to do their particular duties properly. So this is another sort of prayers where it's not due to some apparent calamity hitting at us. For example, Gajendra, he was being bitten by a crocodile and he tried by his own strength and endeavor to overcome, but he couldn't do it. So then finally, as a last resort, he cried out for help. But this is another instance of prayers where before starting one service, one understands that I'm actually very small and tiny. I can't do this in my own strength and endeavor. I need the blessings of the Lord. I need the blessings of the previous acharyas. And in that mood, one offers prayers to the Lord. And we see that mood with all of our acharyas. Like if we read all of books, like for example, Chaitanya Charitamrita, before Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he starts actually writing Chaitanya Charitamrita. The whole first section is just prayers. Prayers to the spiritual masters, prayers to the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. In this way, he's just offering prayers to different personalities, seeking their blessings before he starts to do his service of writing the Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I was thinking this mood, we should actually carry. This one lesson we can take is, before we do any service, we can make it a point to offer some kind of small prayer to the lotus feet Radha Gopinath. And it can be anything. It's not just like only when some problem or difficulty comes, then we come to a temple, or then we look at a picture of Krishna and say, Krishna, oh, I'm having this problem. It's not only in those instances we should offer prayers, but throughout the whole day, whatever services we're doing, before starting that service, we can offer a prayer to Lord. Just like in Bhagavatam class, before we start Bhagavatam class, we offer prayers to Bhagavatam itself. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We offer prayers to our spiritual masters. We offer prayers to Krishna. And get their blessings before starting to recite and talk about Bhagavatam. So in the same way, no matter what a service comes, for example, cooking, if we assign service of cooking, before we start cooking, we can pray to Srimati Radharani for her blessings, to cook some nice bhoga offering for Krishna. We can pray to Krishna also. Any service that comes, even book distribution, before we start, I always make a point to look at a picture of Radha Gopinath and pray to them for their blessings, for the empowerment to reach out to many conditioned souls during that day with their books. So any service that comes to us, in our mind at least, mentally, we can be in a very prayerful mood, and in that prayerful mood, do the service. And this way we'll get more empowerment, we'll get more blessings to do greater service. And this is something that can be very easily, logically understood. There's like two devotees doing the same service, but one devotee is going in a very humble mood. Before starting the service, he's intensely praying to Krishna, or Radha Gopinath, thank you for giving me this service. I'm a fool, I'm not sure if I could do this service properly. All intelligence comes from you. Please give me the intelligence to do this service nicely for your pleasure. So if one devotee on one hand is praying intensely like this, in a very humble mood to Radha Gopinath, then naturally Gopinath or Krishna, he'll be more inclined to favor or empower that devotee to do much better service, much better quality service. So in this way it's important, this one important lesson we can take from Bhagavatam too, that no matter whatever service or activity we're doing in our lives, we should always start up in a prayerful mood, and even while doing that service, we can maintain that prayerful mood. Even something like going to work, we shouldn't see going to work out there as something separate from devotional service. We should connect it to our spiritual life. And before starting the work, we can again offer praise to Krishna that, okay, I'm doing this work to get money to maintain a Krishna conscious family and to support the temple and to maintain my spiritual life. Krishna, please bless me so I don't get entangled, while I'm working out there in the material world. Please bless me so I can do my work, but at the same time always remember your lotus feet. So in this way, every single activity we do during the day, we can start it off with a prayerful mood. And even during that service, we can maintain that prayerful mood. Even something simple like honoring prasad. Prabhupada has taught us before we honor prasad, again we offer praise. So like this, if you analyze, the whole program Prabhupada has given us is full of praise. So offering praise, being in a prayerful mood, is a very important part of spiritual life that we can learn from this. And in today's verse, the demigods, they're glorifying two aspects of Krishna. One is Krishna's lotus feet and Krishna's lotus face. So I'll read the translation again. The lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search after the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of rivers, the Ganges, which can deliver one from all sinful reactions. So in terms of the lotus feet of the Lord, there's one beautiful verse that comes in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. Dheyam sada paribhavagnam abhistadoham tirtas padam shiva virinchinitam sharanyam brityatiham pranatapala bhavabdipotam vande mahapurishate charanarvindam. So in this verse, it's a very nice verse. It's explaining different points about the glories of Krishna's lotus feet. First thing this verse is saying, that Dheyam Sada. Sada means always, and Dheyam means to meditate. So the first thing this prayer is saying, that actually Krishna's lotus feet is the only object of meditation, which should be meditated upon always. Sometimes, when I was reading that recently, I was thinking that sometimes we go to distribute books, and the way we introduce our books is, hello, how are you? I'm a monk. We have this nice book. These are some nice books on yoga and meditation. And some people, in response to that, they'll say, oh, meditation, I'm already meditating. And sometimes they'll have like a beer bottle in their hand. They'll be drinking some beer or alcohol, and they'll say, this is my meditation. Beer is my meditation. Or sometimes people will give the excuse, I don't have time to get into meditation. My work is my meditation. Or sometimes they'll have some children at home when we go door knocking, and they'll say, oh, my kids are my meditation, I don't have time for this. But according to Shastra, it's explained that the actual object of meditation is Krishna's lotus feet. And when should one meditate on Krishna's lotus feet? Is it that only at the time of difficulty, when one is in trouble, should we meditate on Krishna's lotus feet? Or is it only in the early hours of the day, during the Brahma Muhurta, we should meditate on Krishna's lotus feet? No, according to this verse, it's saying, Dheyam Sada, always, 24 hours a day, a devotee of the Lord should be meditating on Krishna's lotus feet. Then the next thing this verse says, Dheyam Sada Paribhavagnam Abhistadoham. Paribhavagnam means that by meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, one can overcome all embarrassing situations of material existence. So the conditioned soul, after he enters the material world, through many different lifetimes, throughout his whole life, he is faced with different challenging, embarrassing situations. For example, we're talking about Gajendra. In the 8th canto, his story comes up. And he's the king of the forest, somewhere in the Trikuta mountain, in the more heavenly regions of the universe. And it's nice how the Bhagavatam describes it. That Bhagavatam brings Gajendra scene as the king of the forest, and he's having a great time. There's this beautiful valley in Trikuta mountain. There's so many nice heavenly pleasures, and he's the king. He's walking with all of his different wives and his children. And it's mentioned as Gajendra was going through a forest, all different small animals, in fear of him, they all started running away. It's mentioned even the lions in the forest, they were afraid of Gajendra. So he was like the boss, and everyone in the forest was, in a very subservient mood to him. Everyone was afraid of him, everyone was his servant, and he was the king, everything was going nicely. And then he enters the lake, and then him and his wives and his children, they have a good time swimming and spraying each other with water in the lake. And like this, there's like 10, 15 verses Bhagavatam is describing about the beauty of this mountain, the beauty of this forest, how Gajendra is the king, how everything is going nicely in his life. But then suddenly what happens? A crocodile comes and bites onto Gajendra's feet. And even though this Gajendra, he is portrayed as this great king of the forest, and everyone's afraid of him, and he's the boss, and everyone's his servant. But now, just a crocodile, he can't even overcome. So this is one example of us being put into embarrassing situation in material life. And according to the Acharyas, it's explained that this crocodile that has bit Gajendra, it represents, or it symbolizes the crocodile of material existence. That we'll be going through life, according to a karma, we'll be going through a happy period of life, but then suddenly the crocodile of material existence will come and bite at us through different problems, family problems, financial problems, virus problems, this and that. So in this way, the crocodile of material existence, the Acharyas explain, it can come out and hit at us at any time. But if we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, as Gajendra did in this instance, then one can overcome these embarrassing situations of material life. One class I was listening to Bhava Vibhshana Pabhu about this Leela of Gajendra, he was mentioning that the Acharyas explained that one point the Acharyas mentioned about how Gajendra was able to attain the mercy of the Lord was that when he was being bit by the crocodile and he started offering prayers to the Lord, he never blamed the crocodile, that this stupid crocodile has bit me and he is the cause of my suffering. But instead, Gajendra blamed his own karma. When Gajendra was offering prayers to the Lord, he was saying, oh, because of my past bad karma, I am going through this difficulty at this moment. And the Acharyas explained, because Gajendra, instead of blaming the crocodile, because he blamed his own karma, because he blamed himself, this attracted Krishna's mercy. And due to that one act of Gajendra blaming his own karma, it's mentioned Krishna gave him the remembrance of the prayers he remembered in his past life. So the Acharyas explain that's the key point in the Gajendra Leela. How did, even though Gajendra was just a dumb elephant, how did he remember the prayers that he had learnt in his previous life as King Indradumna? The Acharyas explain. The moment when in his mind he was thinking that actually this suffering I'm going through is just due to my own karma, it's not due to this crocodile. At that instance, the Acharyas explain, Krishna gave him the remembrance of the prayers he had learnt in his previous life. So this point is very important, that whenever the Bhagavatam explains, whenever we go through any difficulty in life, we shouldn't, or we go through any embarrassing situations in life, the Bhagavatam explains, we shouldn't be blaming others, but instead we should blame ourselves. And we see this throughout the whole Bhagavatam, different great personalities. They never blame other persons, point the finger and say, okay, because of you I am in this embarrassing situation, because of you I'm going through this difficulty. But no, they always blame themselves. And this actually attracts the mercy of the Lord, as explained in the case of Gajendra. For example, with Dhruva Maharaj, when he was insulted by his stepmother, then the first instruction, his mother, Suniti, told him that don't wish anything bad for your stepmother. Because when one points the finger at the other person and wishes something bad, the result of that is one harms themselves. And Radhashyam Prabhu, he was quoting one verse from the first canto in relation to this. In first canto, in that section where Maharaj Parikshit, he is touring the kingdom, and he comes across a low-class man who's actually Shudra but is dressed in royal garments, and he's beating a bull. And Parikshit Maharaj immediately comes and intervenes. And Parikshit Maharaj, he asks this bull that, who has done this to you? Who has beaten you so badly? Who has caused this distress to you? Now again, this bull could have just pointed that finger at Kali personified, saying that this man, this Kali personified, this low-class man, he has been beating me down. And he's broken down all my legs except for one leg. But no, the bull, who is none other than Dharma personified, he quotes many different verses, and not in one verse does he say, actually the cause of all my suffering is this low-class man who's been beating me. Instead, the bull gives different reasons. It could be due to time, it could be due to karma, this or that. And then finally, Parikshit Maharaj says that by the words you have spoken, the words of philosophy you have spoken, I can understand that you are none other than Dharma, Yamaraj himself. And then there's one very beautiful verse which Maharaj Parikshit quotes, which Radhashyam Prabhu was explaining. In this verse, Parikshit Maharaj, he says that when someone does something bad to us, and we in turn point the finger at them and saying that this person's at fault, this person has done this to us, then the result is that whatever reaction that person who is the perpetrator, whatever reaction that perpetrator is supposed to get, that same reaction we'll also get. That's what Maharaj Parikshit says, according to Dharma. So Radhashyam Prabhu is mentioning that this sounds like very heavy, that someone else will do something bad to us, but if we hold a grudge against him and we point the finger that this person did this thing to me, this person did that thing to me, and how is it that that person's destination or the reactions, the negative reactions that persons will get, we'll also get if we're thinking that this person's the cause of my suffering. But that's the way Shastra is explained, that's the way how Dharma is formed. That's why we see throughout the whole Bhagavatam, whenever someone else does something bad to another person, they never blame that person. Because the moment we blame that person, whatever reaction that person is supposed to get, we'll also get the same reaction, according to Parikshit Maharaj. That's why we see with Parikshit Maharaj himself, when he was unjustly cursed by the young Brahmana boy, he never blamed him. He never pointed to a finger at this young Brahmana boy, oh, because of him, now I'm going to die in 7 days. No. He just blamed himself. There's few verses in Bhagavatam where Parikshit Maharaj is regretting, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have put the snake around this rishi's thing. In this way Parikshit Maharaj was lamenting and regretting. So all these great devotees of the Lord, they always point the finger at themselves, they never blame others for their situation. And in this mood, they take shelter of the Lord. And that is the way to overcome embarrassing situations in material life. So the way we can overcome these difficulties or embarrassing situations in material life, just like Gajendra was going through, is by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Not by blaming others, which is natural for the condition. So whenever someone is stuck in some hard situation, they blame others, that okay, because of this person, that person, I'm in this difficulty. But according to Shastra, instead of blaming others, we should put the fault on ourselves and come in front of the Lord and take shelter of His lotus feet. Okay, so first thing is Dhyayam Sadat, that Krishna's lotus feet is the supreme object of meditation, which should be meditated upon always. Then next is Paribhavagnam, which we talked about now, and then Abhista Doham. Abhista Doham means that by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, one will be blessed or endowed with that hankering which the soul is desiring the most. So what is the hankering of the soul? The topmost desire, which will completely satisfy the soul, that's Krishna Prema. So according to this verse, if we simply meditate on Krishna's lotus feet, one will be naturally endowed with Krishna Prema. The more we meditate on Krishna's transcendental form, His beauty, the more love for Him will be evoked. And similar verse is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he mentions about Mahaprabhu, that Shri Mukha Shri Anga Ye Kare Darshana Sarva Papa Hoyashaya Paya Prema Dhana. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, also in CC, that Shri Mukha, anyone who looks at the lotus face of Mahaprabhu, Shri Mukha Shri Anga, or anyone who looks at the transcendental body or beauty of Mahaprabhu, Ye Kare Darshana Sarva Papa Hoyashaya. All of the sinful reactions he has committed, all of them get nullified, simply by taking darshan of the transcendental beauty of Mahaprabhu, and Paya Krishna Prema. And Prema Dhana, the supreme treasure of Krishna Prema, as Kamsari Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, the three greatest treasures one can get. One of them is Krishna Prema. So this great treasure, Prema Dhana, one can get bestowed with this just by taking darshan of Mahaprabhu or taking darshan of the lotus feet of Krishna. Then next thing, the verse explained is Tirtha Pada, and which is also being explained by the demigods today. That the lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. So again, same thing this verse is mentioning, Tirtha Pada. And then the next thing is mentioning that great demigods like Shiva and Virinchi. Virinchi is Lord Brahma and Shiva is Shiva himself. So great demigods like Shiva, Brahma, they're all taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. And then Bhrithyati ham pranatapala bhavabdipotam. So the third line explains that Bhritya refers to the servants of the Lord. For those servants of the Lord who come and bow down in front of him and take his shelter of his lotus feet, for those devotees, Krishna, he removes all the anxieties, all their problems in life and gives them supreme protection. Then bhavabdipotam. Bhava means mature existence, the ocean mature existence, and potam means the boat. So by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, it's like taking shelter of a suitable boat by which one can cross over the ocean of mature existence. So in this way, it's a very beautiful verse. It's giving 6-7 different points about the glories of Krishna's lotus feet. So we can meditate on this verse and take shelter of Radha Gopinath's lotus feet. Also, when I was reading this verse, I was remembering some time ago during, I think it was a Sunday feast class, Ghanshyam Prabhu, he gave a whole class about the different symbols which are there on Krishna's lotus feet. So according to the Puranas, different Puranas, it's mentioned that there is 19 symbols on Krishna's lotus feet, and different symbols, they represent different things, benefits one gets by meditating on Krishna's lotus feet. So I thought this was a nice opportunity to go through them again. So I was going through yesterday the notes I took during Ghanshyam Prabhu's class. So I'll just go through them now. It'll be a nice revision for us. Okay, so there's 19 symbols altogether, and these explanations of these are given in the Skanda Purana, Matsya Purana, Garga Samhita, from these different shastras. Firstly, there's the half moon on Krishna's lotus feet. So the moon is Soma, and Soma is the demigod in charge of the mind. He's the presiding deity of the mind. And so the benefit of meditating Krishna's lotus feet is if you take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, one's mind will automatically be controlled. And also Lord Shiva, he has a half moon on his head also. So the half moon again represents that Krishna's lotus feet are so great that Lord Shiva, he's always meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, and on his head he's taking the Ganges water, which is again the water that has washed Krishna's lotus feet. Also another characteristic of the moon is that the moon gives very cooling rays. And so it's mentioned in the Shastra that in our heart there's like a blazing fire. So we're all suffering in the blazing fire of mature existence. But if we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, then Krishna's lotus feet are just like the cooling rays of the moon. It will completely satisfy, cool down our burning heart. Then there is the Kalash, which is like the pot of nectar, which is on Krishna's lotus feet. And the Kalash represents all auspiciousness, and it also represents that Krishna's lotus feet rejuvenates our dry hearts. So many times Prabhupada, he will quote the poet Vidyapati. The poet Vidyapati, in one of his songs, he writes that actually our life is just like suffering in the deep desert of mature existence. Everyone is suffering. Everyone's throats are parched due to lack of water, and everyone's suffering in the desert of mature existence. And in the name of society, family, friends, sense gratification, people, they try to parch themselves. But actually the pleasure one gets from family, society, community, sense gratification is just like a drop of water. What can a drop of water do to quench the dry, parching throat of a person suffering in the desert? So Krishna's lotus feet are those actual objects which can actually satisfy our dry hearts. And then on Krishna's lotus feet is the triangle. So the triangle represents that Krishna is the Lord of all the threes. So he's the Lord of the three gunas, he's the Lord of the three worlds. And then there's the bow. The bow represents that we should put our mind as the arrow on the bow, and we should shoot ourselves at Krishna's lotus feet. And this way takes shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. And then there's like this, you see there's this shape on Krishna's lotus feet which has like concentric circles, and that represents the sky. And the sky represents how, just like the sky is all-pervading, in the same way Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is present everywhere. Like we sing in Nashima prayers, Ito Nashima, Parato Nashima, Yato Yato Yami, Tato Nashima. The Lord Nashima Dev is here, Lord Nashima is there. Wherever you go, Lord Nashima Dev is there. So that's represented by the sky, that Krishna's presence is there everywhere. Wherever we go, Krishna is there present with us. Then there's the calf's footprint. So the calf's footprint, it represents again that famous verse from the 10th canto, which explains that if one takes shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, then the great ocean of material existence, which seems so vast and unsurpassable, it automatically reduces to the size of the lotus of the foot of a calf. And this way one can very easily cross over the ocean of material existence. Then there's the fish. So Prabhupada will use this example of the fish, a fish out of water. So just like the fish, it can't live without water. If you take a fish out of water, it completely struggles for existence. In the same way, devotees, for them, Krishna's lotus feet is like that. Just like water is for fish, without water, fish, they'll just struggle and they can't maintain their lives. In the same way, devotees of the Lord, they're so much attached to Krishna's lotus feet that without thinking of Krishna, they can't maintain their existence. They'll just die. And we see that with the Vrajavasis, that day and night, their attachment for Krishna, Krishna's lotus feet is so intense. Day and night, they'll just completely be absorbed in Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's activities. Also, the fish represents all of our spiritual desires being fulfilled. And also, the fish represents our fickling mind. So if you ever see a video of fish, you'll see they're constantly moving in different directions. They'll go this way, then they'll suddenly turn that way, then this way. So they'll move in different ways, like zigzag way in the water. So that represents our fickling mind. So as Krishna is explaining in 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that the mind is chanchala. The mind is always very flickering and is very hard to control. But by practicing, meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, one can control the fickling mind, which is just like a fish. Then there is the conch shell on Krishna's lotus feet. The conch shell represents victory, or the removal of all inauspiciousness. Then is the konastika, which is the 8-pointed star. So this one is nice. So the 8-pointed star represents the 8 directions. So on one hand, it can represent that if we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, we'll be protected from all 8 directions. Nothing can harm us. And we see that with Arjuna. Parikshit Maharaj, he himself says in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam that on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it was like a great ocean. And in this great ocean, my forefathers, the Pandavas, Arjuna, my forefathers, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, they were just like little fish in this ocean. And these great warriors like Bhishma, Karna, Dronacharya, they were like big whales. They were like big Timingala fish. My forefathers didn't stand a chance. But because they took shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, they were able to be victorious and overcome all these obstacles in this great ocean of Kurukshetra. So if one takes shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, they'll be protected in all 8 directions. Nothing can harm them. Another example is that of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, who is he? He's just a 5-year-old boy. And on the other hand, we have Hiranyakashipu, the greatest demon of all time. And Hiranyakashipu was so powerful, we read in Bhagavatam that all the demigods were under him. He controlled pretty much everything, the whole universe. Apart from Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma, everything was under his control. So where is the match of a 5-year-old boy against Hiranyakashipu? But because Prahlad Maharaj had taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, he was protected in all 8 directions. And no matter how many ways Hiranyakashipu tried to kill or assassinate Prahlad Maharaj, he was unsuccessful. And in the Bhagavatam, he gives a few examples of how Hiranyakashipu tried to torture or kill Prahlad Maharaj. Like he gives the example, he tried to throw him off a cliff, he put him in the pit of snakes, or got elephants to trample him, or attack him with deadly weapons, or tried to poison him. So Bhagavatam mentions a handful of different examples. But Prabhupada in 7th canto, he writes that it's not that Hiranyakashipu just tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj 5 different ways, 10 different ways, or 20 different ways. But Prabhupada writes that Hiranyakashipu, he tried to assassinate his own son, Prahlad Maharaj, in thousands of different ways. So that's how crazy and heartless Hiranyakashipu was. Thousands of different ways he tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj. And all those thousands of different ways, Prahlad Maharaj was unharmed. So this is what happens when one takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. This was represented by the 8-pointed star. One is protected in all 8 directions. Another meaning of this is Not only will one be protected in all 8 directions, but one can go conquer in all 8 directions. And whatever that's attainable in the universe, or devotees of the Lord, whatever they desire to attain, they can attain that. And nothing can get in the way. For example, Dhruva Maharaj, his ambition was to get a planet higher than that of Lord Brahma. And Prabhupada writes in 4th canto that ordinarily this was impossible. This is impossible. Lord Brahma's planet, Brahma Loka, is the topmost planet in this material world. How can you get a planet greater than that of Lord Brahma? So even though Dhruva Maharaj, he was desiring something which was actually practically impossible, something which no one before had desired, because he took shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, based on the instructions of his spiritual Maharaj Narad Muni, he was able to attain that. So this is another meaning of Konastika, that whatever a devotee desires, he can obtain in any of the 8 directions. Wherever he wants to go and conquer, he can conquer that. Nothing can stop him. And another example is that of Arjuna, that ordinarily, in the story that Toshin Krishna Prabhu was mentioned recently of Lord Brahma, so not Lord, Mahavishnu, wanted to take darshan of Krishna and stealing all the sons of the Brahmana. And then Krishna, he takes Arjuna through all the upwards, past Loka mountain, through the dark region, and then again through all the layers of the universe into the Mahavishnu Loka. So again, ordinarily this is impossible. How can just the ordinary soul go through, all the 7 layers and cross to the other side? But because Arjuna surrendered to Krishna's lotus feet, he can go any direction he wants. Nothing is unobtainable for him. So this is the benefit of Konastika. Also the 8-pointed star represents the 8 mystic powers. Devotees of the Lord, they are naturally endowed with all these mystic powers, all the mystic powers of the yogis. Then there's the swastikam, it represents auspiciousness, and then we have the Sudarshana Chakra. The Sudarshana Chakra represents how by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, one can overcome all the 6 anarthas. And classical example of that is Kaliya. We know Kaliya, he was so envious, so much arrogance and pride he had. But just by being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, it's mentioned as he was vomiting the poison and as he was vomiting blood from his mouth, at the same time all the anarthas which was in his heart was also coming out, and he was becoming purified. So simply by meditating Krishna's lotus feet, one can overcome all these anarthas. And then we have the umbrella. So that we read yesterday, right? Yeah, yesterday. So the demigods were also giving the same example, that by Krishna, your lotus feet is like an umbrella which can protect us from the miseries of mature existence. So again, the same point is mentioned in other shastras, that Krishna's lotus feet is like an umbrella by which we can, just like we use umbrella to protect ourselves from getting wet, similarly the different miseries caused by other living entities, miseries caused by our own mind, and then there's miseries caused by material nature, like natural disasters or like the virus which is going around now. So all these different miseries which are there, if we're absorbed in meditating Krishna's lotus feet, we won't be affected by these different miseries. Then there's the barley corn, and that represents nourishment. So just like barley corn we use for food, it's in the same way. If we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, that acts as spiritual nourishment for our hearts. And also it represents that all our past will become insignificant, just like a small barley corn. All those different sinful things we've done in our past all gets reduced to a very insignificant amount. Then we have the elephant stick. So it's mentioned that our mind, it represents like a big elephant. So just like a big elephant is like unconquerable, it's very hard to control. In the same way, our mind is compared to that. That it's very big and ferocious, very hard to control, but with the elephant stick of Krishna's lotus feet, one can subdue the mind and bring it under control. Then we have the flag, which represents ultimate security and protection, the thunderbolt, which represents that Krishna's lotus feet acts just like a thunderbolt on our mountains of sins. So it's mentioned through countless lifetimes, we have accumulated so many sins that they're just like big, big mountains. And if we measure in Krishna's lotus feet, it's just like a thunderbolt coming and destroying these mountains of sins. And then there's the rose apple or the jumbo fruit. That represents how Krishna's lotus feet is being worshipped by the residents of Jambudvip. And then we have the Urdhva Rekha, or the line going up. So there's, in Krishna's lotus feet, there's just like a line, a straight line going up, a vertical line. So that represents how Krishna's lotus feet are like a lifeline by which we can hold on to and get carried up to the spiritual world. Just like we see fire rescue, helicopters, they come and they drop a line into the water or somewhere, and someone will hold onto the rope and get lifted up into the helicopter into safety. So in the same way, Krishna's lotus feet are like that. If we just simply hold on tightly to Krishna's lotus feet, hold on tightly to his instructions, to our instructions of our spiritual master, then just by that one act, we can get carried to the spiritual world. And lastly is the lotus flower, which is also again described today in today's verse. And the lotus flower, it represents Lakshmi Devi, how Krishna's lotus feet is the abode of Lakshmi Devi, and how, not in this verse, I think, but I think somewhere else I was reading recently, it's given that devotees, their eyes are just like bumblebees. And Krishna's lotus feet or Krishna's eyes, they're just like lotus flowers. And just like bumblebees are always going for the nectar of the lotus flowers, in the same way, devotees' eyes are always absorbed in the transcendental beauty of either Krishna's lotus feet or Krishna's lotus-like eyes. And so that's all the 19 symbols. So these are nice things to meditate on. Next time we take darshan of Krishna's lotus feet, we can remember some of these things. And secondly, this verse talks about the lotus face of Krishna. And similar benefits are given for Krishna's lotus face. And there's one verse in the 3rd canto which says, Hasam Hare Ravanata Kilaloka Tivra Soka Susagara Visosanamachudaram Sammohamayam Rachitam Nijamaya Yasya Brumandalam Munikrite Makara Dujasya. So this verse is explaining that anyone who simply comes, Hasam Harer. Hasam means the beautiful smile of the Lord. Avarnata Kilaloka Trivra. Anyone who comes and simply bows down in front of the Lord, taking darshan of his lotus smile, for that person, Tivra. Tivra means intense. And Soka. Tivra, Soka means intense grief. Soka Asu Sagara. Sagara means ocean. So the ocean of tears, which is caused by intense grief, that ocean becomes dried up just by taking darshan of the lotus face or the smile of the Lord. And the other benefit this verse is saying that simply by taking darshan of the eyebrows of the Lord, one can overcome all the lusty desires which is situated in one's heart. So in this way we can see how easy Krishna has made this process of bhakti. The Shastras explain that great yogis, they try to overcome these material desires like lust, envy, pride, and even though they're meditating for so many years, they're unable to overcome it. Whereas for devotees of Lord, they can just simply come to a temple, take darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord, take darshan of Krishna's beautiful, wonderful form, his transcendental face, his transcendental smile, and simply by that, they can just overcome their anatta. So our process is so much simplified and it's made so easy by Krishna's grace. So Krishna, it's mentioned, Prabhupada said that Krishna, he's more eager for us to come back to him than we are eager to come back ourselves. If we just take one step towards Krishna, Krishna will take 10 steps towards us. And lastly, I was reading recently about the pastime of Netrotsava. So Netrotsava is the festival, it's given in CC. That's the day when, after 14, 15 days of being sick, Lord Jagannath, he comes and gives darshan. And during this day, I was listening to one lecture by my Guru Maharaj, and he was saying that we can learn from this Netrotsava pastime of how is it we should take darshan. Because Mahaprabhu, he has come in the mood of a devotee to teach us how to do bhakti, how to do devotional service. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shiksastakam Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shridhari Kripam Buddhir Yastam Maham Prapadya. So Mahaprabhu, he is himself descended down to teach us Vairagya, to teach us Vidya, knowledge, and to teach us how to do Nija Bhakti Yoga, how to do devotional service to himself. So my Guru Maharaj was mentioning that in this pastime of Netrotsava, Mahaprabhu is teaching how is it one should take darshan of the Lord. So ordinarily, Mahaprabhu, he would take darshan from the Garuda Stamba. And as we're hearing recently from Toshan Krishna Prabhu, the reason Mahaprabhu would take darshan next to Garuda Stamba is because Mahaprabhu's mood was that Garuda, he is a great devotee of the Lord. So naturally, Lord Jagannath's eyes will go to his pure devotee Garuda. So if I stand next to Garuda, then just maybe Lord Jagannath's glance will also fall upon me because I'm standing next to Garuda. So this was the mood in which Mahaprabhu used to take darshan. But in this instance of Netrotsava, it's mentioned for 14-15 days, no one had darshan for Lord Jagannath because Lord Jagannath's pastimes or being sick. So during that pastime, or during this time, what would the devotees do? Mahaprabhu used to go and take darshan of the Alarnath deity, which is about 20-25 k's away from Jagannath Puri. And it's mentioned that taking darshan of this deity is non-different from taking darshan of Lord Jagannath. And I was hearing one lecture by Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj, and he was explaining why is it that Mahaprabhu took shelter of this deity, Alarnath deity, during the 14 days of absence of Lord Jagannath's darshan. And Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj, he was a Hindi lecture, so I understood 70-80% of it based on context, but he was reciting one story of how actually this deity of Alarnath is actually Krishna himself. It's a four-handed form of Krishna, it's a four-handed form of Lord Jagannath. And he was sharing one pastime, how one time there was one alvar. So as we know in South India, they have these famous alvars, these great devotees of the Lord. And they're like kind of like their acharyas. So one time one alvar from South India, he had come to Jagannath Puri to take darshan of the Lord. But it was during the Snan Yatra time, so the darshan was closed and he couldn't take darshan Lord Jagannath. And being upset that not being able to take darshan, he was going away and he was going to commit suicide in the ocean. And Lord Jagannath, it's mentioned, to stop this great alvar from committing suicide, it's mentioned Lord Jagannath personally came and gave darshan to this great alvar. And because these alvars, they're like from the Sri Sampradaya, their deity, worshipful deity is Lord Narayan. So when Lord Jagannath came to give darshan to this alvar, to satisfy him, Lord Jagannath came in his four-handed form to please this devotee, because this devotee is in the mood of Narayan. Just like we have during Snan Yatra at night time, we see Lord Jagannath, he has the Hativesh. And there's the whole Leela, as we all know. He did that to satisfy one Brahmana who thought Ganesh is the greatest, So the Supreme Jagannath, he must have a Ganesh face. So Lord Jagannath, just to pacify him, Lord Jagannath, he showed him the form of him having an elephant face. So in the same way, to satisfy this alvar from Sri Sampradaya, it's mentioned that Lord Jagannath, he came in his four-handed form. And then that four-handed form of Lord Jagannath, that became this deity, Alarnath. And there's also another story in relation to this deity that's given of how later on there was different pujaris from the line of Ramanacharya. They were worshipping this deity of Alarnath. And one time the Brahmana in charge of the pujari, he was in charge of the bhoga offering, he went away to collect some alms and he asked his little 5-year-old boy to do the offering. And it's a long story. The boy, he does the offering and has very simple devotion. He says, okay, Krishna, please eat this. And Krishna is not coming and eating. And then the boy, he becomes upset and he starts crying, oh, Krishna's not eating, Krishna's not eating. When my father comes back, he'll scold me that I didn't offer properly. And then it's mentioned Krishna being so pleased by this child's devotion, Krishna personally comes down and starts eating the prasad. And later on, when his parents chastise him that, oh, you ate the prasad, you ate the mahaprasad, you ate the bhoga, where is the prasad? And they didn't believe or trust the child.